Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of Killing Eve Season 4, Episode 2. Who's ready to go to Bible camp?
Not me. I'd rather go to Helen's for the night.
Hey, listen,
At least I might get a dinner out of it.
you might get a dinner. You get
Or
to,
a dessert.
oh boy, or you might get to read a bedtime story. Like, there are a lot of different activities that apparently await you at Helen's versus at Bible camp, where you're really just left with possible death. But here,
Yeah, and the airing out of the grievances and screaming in the forest and having hallucinations that you are Jesus. There was a lot going on in this episode.
we have so much to say about Villanelle's storyline, including, a hot take here that I don't know, maybe some people won't see coming, but there's all different storylines. But of course, before we dive into anything more here, hit that subscribe button because we are here after every episode to tell you all about Killing Eve, our own opinions on it. There is no screaming in the forest that is done here. Instead, it is just screaming about the story.
All right, well, let's start out with Villanelle since
Yes.
we've opened up with her. And I honestly thought that this story was wrapped up in the premiere after she almost killed May and then she saw herself as Jesus at the end. I thought they were kind of just telling me that she feels like she's her own savior, that she's really the person that can take control of her life and that she doesn't necessarily have to be all good or all bad, that people are good and bad, and that's kind of the way that goes. And we got there by the end of this episode. I mean, yes, she ended up killing May and Phil. She ended up almost killing herself as Jesus, where I think she really had that moment where it was like, I am who I am. I did not, kill May the first time. I've killed her now. I'm good. I'm bad. I can be both. And, how's she going to go forward with this is really the biggest question.
Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and get my critique of this storyline out of the way first, just so I can get past it and move on. Because the final scene with Villanelle and Villanelle Jesus, which by the way,
Jesus.
I have enjoyed Villanelle Jesus very, very much, but the moment that the two of them were sort of together in that scene, I thought going in, okay, she's either gonna kill Villanelle Jesus or she's gonna make out with Villanelle Jesus. And she basically did like some variation of both. Like, I know she didn't kill Villanelle Jesus, but still, it felt like that was a little too predictable for a show that kind of values itself on being unpredictable. And I don't know if that's a symptom of us watching Villanelle for so long at this point that we can kind of anticipate her motives and anticipate what Killing Eve is going to do for the shock value of it. Like, they knew it would get discussion if they saw Villanelle basically tried to kill her Jesus version of herself after kissing herself, which Villanelle's narcissistic enough to do in the first place.
She is. I also took that moment that she kissed herself sort of thing as a bit deeper, that hopefully it's not just for shock value. I guess we'll see in the next episode, but that it was more of an acceptance and a love of who she is, that she went through this journey to try to prove that she's good. And throughout this episode, Villanelle Jesus was, not being mad at her when she is making these mistakes or almost killing people or airing out Phil and all these sort of things, that her version of Jesus is accepting of both sides of her, that she is good, she is bad. And when she kissed herself, I thought, okay, this is hopefully a symbol of Villanelle coming to terms with herself and loving herself, that it was just sort of the physical representation of like, hey, I'm all right, I'm okay with this, and now I'm gonna strangle you because I'm done with Villanelle Jesus. I'm enough. That's what I took from it. You guys let me know if like maybe I'm reading too deep into the show.
I think the symbolism is probably there, and I do think that's trying to be that's what they're trying to get across, I think, with all of this sort of stuff.
They could have gone another route. I mean, you're right. It was a bit predictable to see it, but,
This is Villanelle. This is characteristic of her behavior at this point, that she would do something like this. I think the meaning is exactly what you said. I mean, I kind of got a sense of that through the whole story anyway. I will say, I did absolutely love the screaming in the forest bit. I loved how it was shot. I love that it is just, I'm just surprised
So trippy.
that nobody else at this Bible camp, other than like, Villanelle and Mason, why is there all this like shouting coming from the forest? What's going on here?
No, I mean, Villanelle really went on a trip
Yeah.
in this, not just to the Bible camp, but I mean within herself. She had almost killed May. May didn't want to talk to her anymore. Then she finally earned her trust back, and then May gives her this very personal information, and it took like zero time for it to get turned around on May, on Phil, that he was responsible for the death of his wife, that he was driving drunk, and he was telling the story of like, my wife died in a car crash, but who knows how it happened? It was just a half the story. And for her to sort of go through that, and then her personal Jesus being like, hey, everyone's going to love you for this. You aired it out. They know who he is. And nobody was on Villanelle's side. That, she really went on a trip, which ended up with Phil and May getting killed and her walking away, which to me, that like this needs to be the end of it.
Yes.
I appreciated it in the premiere. It's fine that it was here. I'm done with this storyline. I don't want to watch a whole season of Villanelle trying to be good. This is the last season. We know who she is. She is bad and she is good. And she has been throughout the whole series.
If she got a better acceptance of herself through all this, then, I'll ultimately be all right with us getting it in this episode. But yeah, I did feel like that message kind of came across in the premiere anyway. My favorite part of the whole storyline was the airing of the grievances when they're all in the circle and they've all got the different things, plastered onto their forehead. This reminded me very much of the Diversity Day episode of The Office, which I am about 1,000% sure would not get made in 2022. And yet here we had this Killing Eve episode being made in 2022, which was all sorts of bizarre. But
yeah, it really was. And that part of it, what Phil wrote on her head, I was just kind of like, I don't actually believe that he would at a Bible camp. It was odd. To be fair, I've never been to a Bible camp, but that felt like a bridge too far for Bible camp.
I have been to Bible camp before. It was
Anybody write that on your forehead?
I gotta say, that never happened, writing anything like that on a forehead. Though I'm pretty sure at least one person in Bible camp was doing something, I would say psychedelic / recreationally in a bathroom, and we all smelled it. So Bible camp ain't really that innocent, everybody. There was no murder at the Bible camp I went to when I was a kid. I will point that much out.
Okay, let's talk about Eve.
Yes.
This was a very sort of telling episode for me for where she is, because we mentioned the finale in our premiere review, which we'll have below, but we're going to mention it again because I think it's really important, that conversation that even Villanelle had on that bridge where, Villanelle was like, I think my monster feeds your monster. And Eve was kind of like, yeah, I think so too. And, if I'm not near you, then my monster's going to be fine. And the more that we've seen her this season, Villanelle's not around and her monster's getting fed and fed and fed and showing up at Helene's house, which was the absolute best part of this episode. It was so good. It was so intense. There was some crazy, weird chemistry there. I don't know if it was just tension or a little sexual or just a little two very powerful women kind of going to the same goal, as it turns out. But Helene is now feeding the monster. So it feels like Eve is looking for someone in this group of 12 to feed her monster. And I'm not trying to take away from her relationship with Villanelle, because I think that there's a real down inside, just deep, true love there and appreciation for each other. But Eve's not really in control right now. I know she thinks she is, but she's stealing steak knives from the dinner, being like, I'm gonna go to this professional assassin's house with a steak knife I got from dinner and hope for the best.
How how is Eve still alive? Like, that is the big question that I have through all of this. I loved
I agree, actually.
Yeah, I love the story with even this episode. Like, this was probably my favorite part of the whole episode, just from start to finish. Her, at first tearing up the tickets to France, to the dinner scene, to the knife. It just feels like this was an absolutely horrendous idea. Like, there's a reason she was called out on this. You're gonna go to an assassin's house. You're gonna go into the assassin's house and be like, I'm gonna make you dinner. And somehow, Eve, I don't know if it's intuition. I don't know if it's luck where she managed to end up that her and Helene are not necessarily on different pages. But yeah, I think that Eve uses, I think, Villanelle in some ways as a band-aid, because I think it's easy for her to say, okay, Villanelle, you are the monster. I am getting fed off of you, and sort of ignoring a larger issue. Her relationship with Villanelle is, by all means, incredibly special, but that doesn't mean that she's not going to get something out of tracking down other assassins. It is this life that Eve is addicted to, and unless she ever really looks at herself in the mirror, this is not going to get better. She's just going to stay out of control.
Absolutely. Even if Eve ended up taking down the entire 12, she would end up having to look for something else.
Yeah.
She has blamed or tried to blame Villanelle for a lot of it, to be like, oh, my life was completely fine before this. I had a good job. I had a husband. I had a house. And then you came along and you blew it all up. And it's just like, no. Villanelle just opened a door to what Eve was already looking for. She wasn't happy in her life. She's pretending like she was, and she truly wasn't.
No.
But that whole scene at Helene's house. So we learn that Helene, at least she's saying this, that she's pretty high ranking in this organization already. She wants to take out the head as well. Probably not for the same reasons. I'm guessing she probably wants to be the head.
That's what I took from it. I just think ultimately maybe the two of them can work together as sort of a means to an end. But let's say, Helene and Eve do work together. They do find a way to get to the top of the 12, which, by the way, Helene's still not even being all that forthcoming with information on that to Eve. She's basically just figure it out for yourself. But ultimately, all this happens. What if Helene ends up getting in charge? And then what if she's worse than the current architecture of the 12th? Because clearly, she is manipulative. Clearly, she's incredibly smart. I don't know. I mean, you mentioned the chemistry with Helene and Eve. I don't know if this is something that's just sort of naturally trained into the 12, that they have sort of this seductive quality to them. But I think that she is so extremely dangerous, to the point that she can make Eve sit down and read a bedtime story that, granted, Eve did not finish, but she still is powerful enough to even put her in that position.
I think if Helene didn't have a kid, Eve would be dead. Just dead. She doesn't need Eve.
No.
Eve doesn't even know who everyone in the 12 is. She can't find the 12. Helene has access to everything in the 12 because she's a high-ranking officer in the 12. She doesn't need Eve for anything, and Eve could end up being a really big problem for her. So I think that if Helene has a chance to just get rid of Eve, she's just going to. Eve doesn't offer anything.
Yeah, my theory on kind of where this is going to go from here is that, Helene didn't kill Eve in this moment, but maybe she'll go out there, let Eve do a little bit of her dirty work, and then as soon as it's super convenient for her and the kid's not around, and maybe it's the right place at the right time, she's just going to go ahead and off Eve at that point. She doesn't need Eve in the long term, and I don't know if Eve really fully understands that, because I think Eve is so far down the I will conclude this mission hole that's all she's thinking about.
Yeah, because I think that's the other problem that Helene knows she's going to come up against, that if both of them have the goal to get rid of whoever the top dog is, Helene, I feel, wants that spot, and Eve wants nobody to have that spot. And since Eve doesn't really offer anything because she doesn't even know who's in the 12, Helene's got to get rid of Eve. Eve is a problem.
I think the other thing I keep sort of thinking about is I think this is a starfish. People in the comments, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but if a starfish loses like one of its arms, if you want to call them that, like it grows something back. And it's like, even if you stop Helene, even if you stop part of the 12, if there's somebody associated with the 12 still out there, they're going to pop back up. You're not going to be able to completely destroy all of the limbs, and Eve doesn't know where all the limbs are located, who all the limbs even are. So it feels like this is almost a fruitless mission.
This is a huge organization. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got the top people, you've got the 12 that are part of all of this. We've only really seen like a very little of the 12. And that's why part of me is kind of like, this feels like how big this organization is. This season needs another season. Like, I'm not sure that, like, if you take down the top person, who's
Yeah.
to say one of the other 12 isn't going to be like, well, it's my time in the spotlight. I'm the new head. Like, there's a bunch of people left. I will say that this season has straight up pulled no punches. They have jumped right in right away with everything that we could need. We saw Helen in the first episode. We had Eve and Villanelle reunite. We had Eve with, Helen in this episode. They know that they have to fast track this.
Yes.
There's a very big organization and not a lot of time in this. I mean, there's only so many episodes, so they got to pack it in.
And now we get to Carolyn. Okay,
Your favorite.
My favorite. Oh, Carolyn. Okay, here's the good news. Still no mention of Carolyn's daughter. They're still abandoning that story, thank goodness. Also, no Carolyn just like, slogging it out in Majorca, being the cultural attaché. Like, I at least like that we're trying to get somewhere with this character, though I still have to say, as interesting as her discussions with Vlad were, and they were reasonably interesting, I would have still give me all that screen time and just throw it back at Eve and Helene. Like, I was much more invested in that than sort of seeing Carolyn just get incredibly frustrated that nothing that she ever seems to do ends up working exactly as she wants.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff with Carolyn was a little bit slower. I mean, she gave Vlad some information. He gave her a so-called a safe house that wasn't really that safe because it was given by them who think she's a rat, and then in fact put a rat in there to be like, just so you know, you're in the safe house, but none of us believe you or trust you or like you, so welcome. It was slow for her.
I will say, I mean, she gets somewhat of a win in the sense that some of her information that she's passing along to Vlad is clearly working, but the fact that, one of her people who, had a donkey, a synonym for donkey in the face, like, I'm trying to really not get demonetized here, people. You know what I'm talking about.
She had a donkey on her butt, a butt on her butt.
A butt on her butt. There we go. The butt on the butt. Yeah, I'm dancing all around that. No, but the butt on the butt thing, there's a reasonable level of success here for Carolyn, but butt on the butt is dead. So how much success is it really?
Yeah, and that's sort of, where it's ended with her for right now. I mean, really, it felt like she was very honest with Vlad that what she's here for is justice for Kenny. She really dealt with it not that great last season when it all happened. She ate a lot of her feelings, which is what the Carolyn character is like. She really sits on things and it really just, eats away at her and eats away at her. So it's nice to see that it's gotten to the point now that she's just like, okay, I've processed some of what's happened to my son, but I'm not okay with what's happened to my son, and I'm going to get justice for what happened to my son. And, we're all Kenny fans, so I'm all right with that.
I think that's why she's probably so miserable about all this after the fact, is she's just sort of thinking, okay, all these people that are associated with me in some way, shape, or form end up just being dead. Kenny's dead. Butt on the butt is now dead. This nothing ever seems to go the way that Carolyn wants. And I think Carolyn just carries a lot of this guilt on her. And I don't know. It's probably not going to get better for you, Carolyn, anytime soon. I'm sorry to say it.
No, probably not.
Not as long as you continue to work with Vlad. If you just wanted to not feel any sort of pain, just go back to Majorca, be the cultural attaché again, and do all those...
Oh, that's not going to help her. She's just going to be in her head all the
time.
No,
I know. I'm just trying to not have to see Carolyn as much. Okay, no,
stop it. Get out.
No, I'm enjoying her story more than I was in
All right,
season
I'll
3.
take that. It's a win.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys think is going to happen now with Villanelle and Eve, because I need to see more of the two of them together now. We didn't really have it at all in this episode.
Yeah, and we didn't have it very much last season at all. Like, it was very little, but, we'll see where Villanelle's going to be going now. I feel like all this Bible religious stuff is behind her. She's moving in a different direction, and we'll see where it goes.
All right, well, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will be here discussing all of Killing Eve this season, and we will see you here next time.